Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and whoever or whatever you identify as. Welcome back to Why We Love Doctor Who, and a very, very special one. We have Goldenagedgeek, we have John the White, and of course, our very, very special guest, Phillip Morris. Hello, gentlemen, and how are we on this wonderfully glorious Good Friday?
It's a wonderful day, isn't it? It's great.
Oh,
nice
beautiful.
to see everybody.
Beautiful
Hope everyone's
day.
having a nice Good Friday and enjoying the good weather.
Oh, it's awesome. Absolutely awesome.
That's marvellous, Philip. It's so good to see you here today. Thank you so much for joining us. Goldenagedgeek, great for you to be with us too. This is just wonderful. Who are we talking to? It's Phillip Morris, everybody.
I know.
So, I mean, I'm a bit fan-struck. Where do I start? You know, oh, blimey.
At the beginning.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. Philip, you and I, we've been friends on Twitter for about 4 years now, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
And I've always found it. I've always found the best thing about your friendship is you're just such a goddamn good bloke. You know, I mean, if it's someone who's sound, whose word I trust, who doesn't get blown around by the wind, you know, you're a really solid character and you're a presence in this fandom. And love you or loathe you, you know, they can't ignore you. What could be better than that?
Yeah. Well, I think if the Doctor Who fan, you both will loathe you. You know, unfortunately, that goes with the territory.
Indeed.
Absolutely. We're talking to the man who saved the web of fear, the man who brought back the enemy of the world. You know, I mean, you are a legend, sir.
This is true.
You are a legend.
Without me, I have to say, those programs, you know, I can guarantee would not exist. You know, it's through the hard work that they did a long time ago now that we managed to save the web of fear, an enemy of the world. I'm just really happy. You know, they've gone down, you know, really well with fandom, and they've enjoyed the programs for what they are, really.
They are treasures. You rescued treasures. You brought us back literal gold, you know.
And you know, hearing it from you, John, and all the other guys, and the fandom in general, that's the best thing you can ever have, is knowing that these programs, which are forgotten in a storeroom somewhere for decades, the BBC obviously didn't value them. Otherwise, you know, this title they put on things of lost episodes were never lost, destroyed, and you know,
they were discarded, abandoned, casually thrown away.
Absolutely,
they were tossed off. You know, they weren't lost; they were tossed off, weren't they?
Absolutely, they certainly were. Yes.
I mean, since you say it is 10 years since you brought those stories back to us, and we have been fortunate in the years since in that we've had the scraps off the table, what we call the animations, you know, and they were far from perfect. But the one thing, because we're talking series 5, which I think for most fans of the classic era, series 5 is possibly only series 3 is next to it as the greatest season of the black and white era.
Absolutely.
And we've had these animations of Fury of the Deep and Abominable Snowman. Unfortunately, we didn't get one for Wheel in Space, which I don't quite understand why we didn't, because it seemed like there was one ready to make. But even with those animations, watching them recently again, it just reminds me. I mean, they're wonderful to have, but it just reminds me of just what we've lost still with missing the originals.
Absolutely, John. I totally agree with you. You know, although you know, I must speak up for the people that do make these animations. You know, there are a lot of very people involved in the process, and obviously they have a lot of budgetary restrictions with, you know, what they're working with. I think what you're going to find is over time these animations are going to be of their time when they were made, and that's
of course they are. Yes,
I think you're going to see better things coming along down the line. Really.
In other words, they go to date quite quickly.
Yeah. But you know, technology always does. I remember watching Doctor Who in the early 70s when what we call colour separation overlay, which is CSO.
Oh, that was the nuts at the time.
Look at it now, think, goodness me, how awful are those special effects? But of the time, they were groundbreaking at the time.
I won't hear it. Carnival Monsters looks as good today as the day it first went out. You know, I mean, because sometimes the ambition of some of the shots the show pulled off with this damn ropey in-camera technology, you know. Can you imagine?
You've got to remember those early Doctor Who's, especially I'd say from the 70s onwards, where they were really well made. They were very well scripted, and you know there was, if you like, for me personally, you know, sort of some of the 60s stuff and the 70s stuff collectively as the heyday of Doctor Who, and I don't think it's approached that magic ever since. But you would not, never expect any TV show to do that.
Well, 6-year-old me watching Sontaran stomp around Gallifrey, I completely agree with you, because no matter what looks to me, looking back at it now, you know, being nearly 51 years old, you know, 6-year-old me thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I didn't care that the TARDIS was part of a swimming pool being shot from 2 different directions. You know, I just didn't care at all, you know, because I didn't know any better. Bless me. You know, I hadn't had my palate ruined. Yeah.
Oh yes.
But yeah, the ambition. I mean, because this series of shows we're doing, it's all about why we love Doctor Who. Yeah. And we've started a journey. We started right back with William Hartnell, with Patrick Troughton, John Pertwee, all through classic. We've now got up to the end of the Tennant era, because we've been covering New Who. Next week we start with season 5 of the Moffat era. So we've been real odyssey. And of course, the Tom Baker added up to what was it, like 5 hours altogether, wasn't it, Tommy?
Yeah, just over 5 hours. 5 hours to a city. My God,
it went like you wouldn't believe. But of course, we came to Underworld, which, you know, sat in the middle of season 15, one of the least loved classic stories of them all. But when I actually looked at it, I looked at it properly, and I looked at the technical expertise that went into its production. And no matter what we think about what that looks like on the screen, what they had to do in their heads, the thinking, the pioneering they were doing to get all of these effects to line up in camera so they could sort of walk around that bit of sticky tape and go round the rock, you know. I mean, I can't believe what they put themselves through to try to produce the show under those circumstances, but they did it. And the thing is, on that basis, a show like Underworld, it represents a tremendous success.
Yeah.
But it's even coherent. You know, I mean, it's amazing. It's really amazing.
It is really amazing.
Yeah, but we take a lot of things about the show for granted, and respecting all of the genius and the talent which has gone on into making it. But I mean, it's sad, of course, because it's when we think of the state of things today and the experience that as a fandom we've been through the last 5 years, and think about how frustrating that's been for so many of the creative people who wanted to do good work and make great content.
Yeah. I take you talking about the Jodie Whittaker era there.
Well, we are, aren't we? A little bit. And of course, we're also looking forward to the future.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something I want to get into with you, Philip, because I know that you're not. I know that you're not universally jumping with joy that RTD has returned to the show.
I wouldn't say I'm not. I'm not jumping for joy with Russell's return. I mean, I've met Russell before. He's a very gregarious, guy, and you have to say to yourself that, when he brought Doctor Who back initially, goodwill behind the program. And I just think it's an awful big risk with all the negativity it's had quite recently. To bring it back again, because basically, people can criticize Russell, but I'll say this: his reputation's riding on this now, and I do wish him success. I'm not going to judge the program. I tune in when it's broadcast, You know, and basically, I think that the viewers in the UK and on Disney Plus will, you know, they'll make their mind up themselves whether they think it's, you know, it's any good or not. But I think it deserves to be, you know, it deserves to be given a chance. You know, I wouldn't try and prejudge anything. I don't think it's really fair.
Well, of course it isn't. You know, and for that, on that basis, I think not only myself but quite a few of us here, we didn't prejudge the Jodie Whittaker era.
No,
I mean,
no.
we did. We watched it and
Yeah.
gave it absolutely every chance. I mean, for myself, I watched the whole of Series 11 before I even formed an opinion, because even though I was finding the first few episodes rough, I thought, well, maybe they're getting into their stride and they'll pull it out the hat for it. And of course, what we got was the Battle of Raza Kalos, gosh, you know.
Yeah, I think, John, I think from my point of view, I mean, when it was first said that they were going to cast a woman as Doctor Who, I thought it was being done from the perspective of, from a dramatic point of view, from drama. And I thought they were going to say, okay, so the character of the Doctor, which hasn't changed all through the years, or shouldn't do, and they're going to, you know, they're going to get a good female actress to portray that character through, you know, the female persona sort of thing. And I thought there's an interesting idea there if it's done properly. You know,
we've just had a comment from Problem Being, which I think is pretty spot on, because I think this is putting where a lot of people are feeling at the moment.
Yeah.
Is I'm at the point where all my previous prejudging was pretty bang on, and I feel I've been here before. It's a bit of a deja vu feeling. Yeah. And I know that feeling. I think we're all feeling it a bit. I mean, Gobby, you couldn't be more upbeat, more optimistic about RTD coming back and Shooty Gatwa being cast.
Yep.
But we're struggling, aren't we? Because every time we have a clown like Suze Kempner to turn up.
Can I just interject? Shooty Gatwa is absolutely fabulous actor. I'm not saying he's right or wrong for Doctor Who, but this guy is an absolutely...
Shooty's got charisma coming out of everywhere, hasn't he? You know, and Millie as well. Their chemistry together is just obvious. It's going to be fantastic.
As I say, I'll judge the chemistry when I see it on screen, but you know,
it looks really
good actor. He's got a good actor in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Shooty Gat was also got a really good track record in some serious theatre. You know, he's got some dramatic chops behind him. He's not just the happy face off the Sex Education. Yeah. You know, so I completely believe that Gatwa is absolutely good casting to play the part. That's the one thing I know Russell was not going to get wrong.
No, yeah. I'm not saying he's right for the part of Doctor Who, because I've never seen an episode he's been.
That's where we're at, isn't it? But it's the other side of the benefit of doubt. I mean, we kind of have to assume that Russell does know what he's doing, and we should expect it to be good. It's going to be a shock if it isn't. If we watch it and it really hits bump notes and we feel, God, this wasn't good at all. If that's what we end up with, which I think is very unlikely, that would be a bit of a shock, because Russell does have his reputation. He does know what he's doing with his casting and so forth.
I must admit, you know, I did feel really. I felt sorry for Jodie Whittaker in the end, to be honest with you, on screen, because I just thought she was. You know, the direction she was given and sort of the scripts that she was, you know, having to work with, I
agree. We feel the same. Yeah.
You know, she was like, you see, you think to yourself, you put yourself in her shoes, and, you know, she sits down with Chris Chibnall and he says, you know, I'd like you to play this character. And, you know, who is the character? And, you know, she needs all that background information. And, you know, I just don't feel that, and I don't know the reason.
Well, we know from the podcast interview that Jodie Whittaker did with David Tennant shortly after season 1 aired. Series 11, sorry. So after series 11 aired. So I think of it as a reboot of the show so much I've wired that as season 1 in my brain. But she was saying that she was actively told not to research the part. But Chris Chibnall wanted her to give her completely authentic personal take without being subject to what the others had done. But I mean, the upshot of it is that she was confessing basically that she hadn't done any preparation, didn't have a clue what she was doing. And that after about four episodes in, she had a bit of a sort of crisis of the soul where she thought that she'd been doing it all wrong, because finally she did see what one of the others had done. And then Chris Chibnall had to kind of hold her hand and something and try to get her to keep going or something. You know, this was kind of the impression that came out of that interview with David Tennant, was that, well, I mean, I would use the word miscast.
Yeah.
In that, at least I think that at least you could say that whether Jodie Whittaker really had what it takes to pull the Doctor out of the hat as an actor, she was missold the part. Yeah. She was misadvised about the part, and she was allowed to attempt the part without being properly prepared.
Yeah,
you know, and that's all down to the production, John, isn't it?
But it is down to the production, but then you must look also into the BBC itself, to the head of drama, who's overseeing all this and signing this stuff off.
Charlotte Moore and Piers Wenger.
Well, yes, you know, they're the people that are overseeing this.
Well, Wenger's gone now, hasn't he? Wenger's been shifted.
Yeah, but Charlotte Moore's still at the BBC.
Yes, yes. Her name's still popping up to tell us how fantastic Shooty Gap was going to be. She was saying that just last week. Okay. So we're in, I suppose we're in this position of kind of a pregnant pause, you know, and of course with myself and my health as well, you know, I'm hoping to keep going long enough to see the 60th at the end of the year. And on that basis, by the way, it looks quite optimistic at the moment. So keeping fingers crossed. Yeah. So, you know, if I even get to see, if I just getting to see this will be great for me. I am very much looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yep.
As I say, John, it's an interesting time. They've obviously brought David Tennant back because obviously there was such a massive drop off.
It's full on emergency measures, isn't it?
It's definitely on life support. It's definitely on life support.
It's like, quick, what rock can we cling to in this storm? Well, you know, to anchor this show.
This is from Russell's point of view, and Russell would have thought, what's my trump card? What can I play? And he thought, I can play David Tennant. I can bring in sort of an interim doctor. I know I'm going to get viewers for that. What else can I use? I can use, you know, I can bring a classic logo back, you know, and give an indication. This is going to be, you know, the same series, you know, try and tie the two programs together, which I've always felt jarred very much. I've never really felt sort of the new kind of 2005 onward series. I don't think it's the same program.
Yeah.
But I find 2005 onwards is more. I'll say the word. It's more for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's the first thing you'll look at all the time is, let's bring this back, let's bring that back. And for me, that's a massive miss. You might bring the odd old character back down again if there's a good script for it, but you're always looking at, for me, new ideas. When I was growing up watching it, it was about new ideas. You weren't raking up.
Yeah.
And it becomes boring. You know, people at home watching it, the odd viewer, you know, they're going, oh no, not this again. You know, you need that impetus, that new material, that new insight to the program, which it needs constantly.
Yeah,
agreed. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating because I mean, it speaks to the question of what is Doctor Who, doesn't it? You know, because we have classic Who, and well, one thing about the classic Who era, we never had any doubt that it was all one program, one continuous production until, of course, it stopped. You know.
Well, I'd slightly disagree with that, John. I'll be on. I have to be really honest here.
Okay.
I Doctor Who from sort of the early 70s, and then probably 1980. You know, I used to watch. You know, the way it was shot with the time tunnel with Tom Bacon. I thought it was really clever. It had a filmic quality to it. And then John Nathan Turner became the producer, and I think that was the downward spiral right there and then. And I think because John was he was a light entertainment producer. He wasn't into scripts and stories or anything like that. He didn't know anything about it, and he just went for the sort of glossy and the casting of sort of light entertainment people.
Yes, JNT's famous stunt casting.
Absolutely, and I think basically, sets became overlit. This was a very fantastic program that, you know, used its resources well, and it just went the opposite way for me from that point. You know, with sporadic good stories sort of in the 80s, not many, sporadic, but it lost itself, it lost its identity. Because the program itself, if you think about it, the main character is an enigma.
Yes.
Yes.
And we find out who Doctor Who is, because the enigma must always be. That's the core of the program. That's how it works.
Yep.
You know, if
Well,
you want,
I mean that's fascinating in its own way, isn't it? Because in the McCoy era, we have what's now known as the Cartmel Master Plan, which was this idea that the last script editor of the show, Andrew Cartmel, had, you know, to make the Doctor a more mysterious Time Lord with a secret, but more than just a Time Lord. And they were starting on all of this sort of stuff then. Same as Chibnall ended up leaning on the Timeless Child.
Then you're trying to show into something else.
Yeah.
You're making it into something else. You know, the program was set out in '60. Who the main character was, and that's who he should still be now. You know, he may grow old and fade away and not be popular, but that's who the character is. The second you start changing it and making it something else, then you're making a different show. You're making the wrong show. Simple as that. It has a formula. You start breaking that formula, it becomes something else.
Well, yeah, something we're going to start getting into next week is the changes that Stephen Moffat made to the formula.
I've heard this thing about Andrew Cartmel had this plan, but I mean, I watched Sylvester McCoy when he first, you know, was cast as Doctor Who in his first stories, and it didn't hit the ground running. It was
it was rough. We were there. It was rough. Yes.
It was awful, and you've got to remember
the Twin Dilemma was rougher in our view of the time in the Rani, but we were both rough. Yeah.
See, the thing about this, I don't look at this from a Doctor Who fan's point of view. I look at this from a general public's point of view.
Always a good perspective to keep in our heads.
Yeah,
it's called in touch with reality, especially with this fandom.
I mean, you know, the thing I find things is if you go into the fantasy direction with any sort of science fiction, people just switch off because if you want to make it up as you go along, and that's what it looks like, you know, it's no one's going to watch it. It has to have a believability factor to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
right.
You know, I mean, as I say, we're going to be getting into the Moffat era, so I don't want to give too many spoilers. But I mean, as far as it goes, I have to agree. Generally, as a theme, the fantasy element was what I struggled with the most from his time. And I mean, you weren't delighted with him as showrunner, were you, Philip?
With who? With which? Who?
With Stephen Moffat. You felt he wasn't taking the show in the right direction.
I mean, I've met Stephen on a couple of occasions.
Right.
You know, he's a very amiable guy.
I've met him as well, actually. So he is. But
I think what the problem was because at the time he was producing Sherlock and writing that, and he was doing Doctor Who at the same time, and I think he had too much on. I think and that's it. You put everything into it. You have a limited run, maybe 3 years, and you get out because you know you want to do the best quality you can.
Well, it was series 9 that really suffered from that, didn't it? You know, with him having his Sherlock hat on.
Yeah,
and the last series of Sherlock was far from the best either.
I've never watched that. I'll be honest with you. I'm very particular about what I watch. I found with Stephen his take on Doctor Who, and I find this probably with all the showrunners. What they say is we make the Doctor Who we want to make. And I kind of think, well, why don't you make the Doctor Who that was always broadcast on the television and just continue it and keep that standard, you know? But
it's a sense of ownership replacing a sense of stewardship, isn't it?
I think the problem you've got is this. I find with it, and that is, it doesn't matter if you've got a sense of ownership. 20 years from now, people will tune into what you've made, and Doctor Who more so than any other show. And it'll stand up or it'll fall down.
Yeah, and if it's crap, you will own it, Chris Chibnall.
I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't just aim that at Chris Chibnall. I think, you know, Russell's written some stuff ropey for Doctor Who. I think Stephen's written, you know, probably a fair bit of it ropey stuff for Doctor Who.
But it's because those guys could also pull out the gold but fandom would let them off with giving them the odd
The
gold-plated sandwich, you know.
Yeah, the problem you've got with the production of Doctor Who since it came back in 2005, it's been made by a small group of people, really,
Yes.
who are, and it's, for some reason, we don't seem to be able to get a showrunner from outside of that circle. And so your creative bubble really is limited to those people, and you're not going to grow or find anything new or anything like that. And it's
this is my biggest worry, Philip, is that the show is having to constantly suffer the impact of being a kind of football between these internal struggles. And what worries me looking at the future for the show is I would look at the last 4 or 5 years of being dominated by the feminists, and that they had a bit of a coup. Really, they got themselves very much listened to, and really given their chance to do what they thought the show should be. Lots of input, and they had Chibnall then tried to deliver that. But now we have the other clique, which is the Fitzroy Club clique, which has very much had control of the show from when Classic ended and the first New Adventures and other alternate media started up in the early 90s. Now they kind of got control again. And when I think about agendas in the show, when I think about the feminists and what they were saying they wanted to do, deconstruct the patriarchy, which obviously means kill off the Time Lords and put a female doctor before the first male doctor. They did these things that they said they wanted to do. But now they are effectively shunted back out of power because they were threatening the very existence of the show. It couldn't continue down the direction they set. But what worries me is what direction is Russell going to do? Because I'm very concerned with how politicised Russell T Davies is. I mean, when you call the government of the day murderers and bastards, that's a little bit strong from a public-facing figure.
John, you and I, John, we both believe in freedom of speech, and at least Russell's, that's what he feels, and I think he's got every right to say that, whichever way he wants to say it, So I have no problem with that, I don't agree with everything that he says. I don't agree with everything he says.
Well, let's put it another way. Would Philip Hinchcliffe or Graham Williams have gone to the national press to denounce the government on the day on the back of their roles as Doctor Who producers?
You've got to remember that Russell is a showman. He's and remember this: no publicity is bad publicity. And basically, he's very, very good at putting a lot of spin behind whatever he's doing. He's very, very good at doing that. And all fair play to him. That's his job.
See, this is my concern here, is that I know that Russell's very good at putting themes into his work. Yeah. But let's say that we have a script for Series 14. Maybe it's the one which is going to have Jinx Monsoon in it. I don't know. Right? But this script has got some content or some themes which speak to modern society and come down on one side of a particularly contentious issue.
Yeah.
And that then, because Russell is a showman, he will make sure that the show impacts that controversy when it goes out. So that each time the show is going to go out, it's going to be getting connected to some modern social or political issue in a way which is going to wind some of the audience up one way and some of the audience up the other.
Right.
And that worries me, that need to be political.
Okay, for balance, John. So what I would say is that Russell's under pressure, probably commercially as well, from with obviously the shareholders. It's been by a company. Disney's involved now. At the end of the day, here he has to make this work. He has to find an audience. So whatever he does, whichever chess pieces he uses on the board that he's creating, he has to make it work, and he has to make it work commercially now. It's not just to be commercially. So, you know, Russell's got a lot riding on this, and if it fails, then Russell goes down with it. You know, so you have to give him that time to say, okay, the employed you, you've been given this, you've been given creative control. Let's see what you can do.
But the other side of that is, if Russell didn't come back, if he hadn't stepped back in, then his legacy was going to be destroyed anyway if the show was cancelled.
I don't agree with that. I think if he hadn't have stepped in, I think his legacy was pretty much safe. I mean, I did say that to him in person. You're the guy that, you know, you made a success. Whether anyone liked it or not, he made a commercial and a rating success of, he had an audience, basically, you know, and you can't argue with that. You know, that's what he's there to do.
Well, there's a difference between I brought Doctor Who back, and it's that show which is still doing gangbusters on the BBC, and I brought Doctor Who back, and then a few years later they cancelled it again. You know, there is a difference between the two. I mean, I can see why, especially with his career active, he'd want Doctor Who to continue to be a success, and probably feels, you know, some degree of responsibility that if he hadn't stepped in, because I mean, we'd be hearing that nobody would step in, that nobody would take the job. That's bizarrely, I don't entirely know if I believe it, but
I think, John, that's a nonsense. That's a nonsense. Of course, someone was. There's a lot of producers out there, young producers, plenty of people to step in. I think you'll find
Douglas McKinnon was a prime candidate.
People do not want to relinquish control at the top of this program.
I think that says more to it, doesn't it?
Eventually, that will be the death of it. Unfortunately.
Well, it's that idea of control, and what is that control for? Who is it for? And this is what I mean about this idea of stewardship seems to be missing, and that constantly saddens me. But I would like the people engaged in actively producing new Doctor Who content in 2023 to really have that consciousness of the legacy that they should be protecting from 1963. You know, and we don't see it anything like enough.
The thing is, John, I mean, I had the conversation. I'll let you into a little bit. I had a conversation with Russell. I mean, it was only a few minutes, and he said to me, "Well, what would you do?" And my honest opinion was, I believe it's finished on television. I think there's enough good ideas in the series that to make a movie series, and I think if you take the best of what's gone before, and you know, put it on the big screen, I think that's the way to go. Said, tell the story from the beginning on the big screen, and he said, I think it's a great idea. However, it's getting money to do, and that was the problem at the time. Maybe now with elements of Marvel.
But it could be a DCU, isn't it? Doctor Who, you know, cinematic universe. It could be done so easily. I mean, the universe is just there, and it's been built on for 60 years. You know, so I mean, you are of course absolutely right. Whether people would be happy to trade a TV show made to a good quality and a good amount a year for a movie series, but I don't know, because we want both, of course, don't we? Really, but I mean, just to take take a previous actor in the part like Tennant or Capaldi, and do a movie with them.
No, I don't think you'd do it like that, John. I think what you'd have to do, you'd have to at the beginning and tell the story from sort of
so a whole brand new start and a whole series of films.
Start with the character as we first met. It's exactly the same as when Marvel started making the Marvel movies. You know, they started with those characters and introduced those characters to a brand new audience, but they were faithful to those original Marvel comics.
Yeah, they were.
You know, right. But they only had comics. We've got a classic series to go back to.
Yeah,
that's where they are.
Now Marvel seems to be in such trouble, especially since it seems that the very last thing Marvel wants to do is to put faithful recreations of current characters on screen anymore. Everything has to be changed. The sex has to be changed, the gender has to be changed, the race has to be changed, the age has to be changed. They don't want to do the straightforward thing. And it seems the same with Doctor Who. You know, the straightforward thing is to get that formula back,
John,
but works so well.
What you're saying with your sentiments, but what I would say is these things have to be commercially successful.
Yeah,
and that is the watermark for things. If basically it's not based on a good script with the right actors, with the right director, with all the right elements coming together, people won't watch them, and they are.
The commercial side of what the show needs to achieve in the future is also something I'm very, very concerned about. And with regard to Disney Plus, it may be that we may end up looking at the whole deal very differently 2 or 3 years down the line. We might end up looking at it as the kiss of death rather than the salvation we hoped it was, because Disney Plus is in an enormous amount of trouble right now. It's not going to go bust simply because Disney can't afford to let it go bust.
Yeah.
But in terms of the streaming wars are a disaster.
Yeah.
And what's happened is that since companies have shifted from physical media to streaming, their profitability has collapsed 90%. And there's too little butter spread over far too much toast, you know, because there's all these different streamers and none of them are achieving viability because they're all competing with each other for the same dollar, you know. And in general, you know, Disney Plus just isn't doing the numbers. And Disney's very worried about it. But also, you know, Disney Plus has The Mandalorian and Disney has the MCU as well. Disney also has Indiana Jones, all the Lucasfilm stuff, you know, Star Wars. And they seem to have made such a mess out of all of their properties. And their flagship shows are failing. Shows like She-Hulk were absolute disasters rating wise, and then The Mandalorian has failed. That audience has collapsed because the audience isn't buying along with their Luke Skywalker member berries anymore. So in general, I mean, everything woke turns to shit, as they say. But Disney's has such a lot of problems with internal rebellions when its staff pushed them to meddle with internal Disney Florida politics that could lose them untold billions of dollars in lost kickbacks that we get from the state of Florida.
But again, John, we come back to it's what viewers want, and it's commercially acceptable and commercially profitable.
And that's the thing. What is the right pitch going to be for Doctor Who to succeed as one show that's actually going to pull viewers to Disney Plus when everything else Disney has tried has actually failed to do that?
Yeah.
I mean, the commercial challenge on the show is actually it's scary how much it has to perform, especially since in the United States of America, Legend of the Sea Devils only pulled in 175,000 viewers tops.
Nope.
Oh, we've lost Philip.
Yeah, I think his connection's been playing up a little bit. He might come back. We'll just carry on. As we were going, which is basically it's all gone woke and it's all gone poop.
Yeah, well, we're having quite a sensitive discussion here. I mean, I find the things that Philip is saying is absolutely fascinating, and we obviously God hope he comes back. But we are going to be talking about missing episodes and stuff more as well. But it's interesting to explore these questions of how we see in the future, because I know that we're all feeling a little bit of tension right now. I'm feeling tense like I wasn't.
Yeah, hold on. I think we're back. Hold on. Here we go. There you go. He's back.
Welcome back, Philip. A temporary blip in the internet. Oh, my heart.
My picture froze, so we've had to get that working again.
I was just saying how badly Legend of the Sea Devils did in the United States.
You know, I did watch that show, and it was. I think it was just a mess, wasn't it?
I was so bored. I was just so desperate for it to end. It was so tedious, that episode.
I thought what the designer did with the Sea Devil was fantastic. By the way,
that was about it. That was about the high point. That was the high point.
Fabulous job.
Yeah,
that was rough last year. I mean, the Groundhog Day Dalek special goes out, and the only thing anyone's talking about afterwards is we saw a Sea Devil in the next time trailer. No one actually wanted to talk about the Daleks, because it was the whole story was so meh. And then we get Sea Devils, and they're all talking about Tegan's coming back. We don't want to talk about the Sea Devils. God, it was awful. What's the next thing going to be?
It wasn't good. We
have to cope with we have to hit the copium hard as Doctor Who fans sometimes, don't we?
Oh, really, really bad.
I was sum up the chat we've had so far, Philip, in saying I just find it fascinating to explore these questions about what the future is going to be, because we are all feeling a certain tension right now, and as I said at the beginning, every time we get a Suze Kempner, being shoved in our face, it's not easy going at the moment.
No, I can believe it. I can understand it. As I say, I'm quite relaxed about. My picture's frozen. I don't know why.
It's gone again.
Well, we've got a bit of a dip in and out issues with the old internet, but we'll persevere as best we can.
We shall battle on. He's gone again. We should
carry
on.
It's probably because he's trying to stream a video. It's overloading the bandwidth, Gobby.
There's a very good chance that's what's
happening. There's a very good chance. Yes.
Hold on, ready? We're back again.
Right, okay.
Feedback again. Thank goodness for that.
I was just thinking, Gobby, if you keep dropping out, Philip, it might be because you're trying to stream your video and that's more bandwidth. So if it doesn't stabilize, maybe come back without the video. We'll see how we do. We'll see how we do.
Yes.
So, have you got anything else that you'd like to say about the future before we discuss other things like missing?
No, I'll be honest with you. I'm not someone. I'm pretty open-minded. I think give Russell a chance. Don't sort of. There'll be all stories coming out on social media to create interest. But until the programs are broadcast, then I would make an informed decision about what comes on screen. That's the litmus test.
Yeah, that'll be the big test. It will be the big test.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of spin and a lot of, sort of anything to get, to spike any social media interest.
Oh, they're already spiking. Yeah, they're already spiking quite a bit of interest for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. But, these things happen.
But, as I say, that's the name of the game. That's show business. No publicity is absolutely really bad publicity. So, that's the way to go with these things.
Yes, yeah.
Well, of course, in the last few days, the TERFs, the trans exclusionary radical feminists, who are a clique I keep an eye on Twitter, they've been talking about Doctor Who a lot, off the back of the Jinx Monsoon casting announcement, because they're quite sensitive to men in women face, as they would probably put it. So I mean, I think that there's certainly a risk the show might be heading into some kind of political confrontation over women's rights versus men's rights. This is part of what worries me with Russell promoting what Russell likes, because Russell seems quite sympathetic to men's rights issues like drag and becoming a trans woman. So I'm worried that he could pick a fight with the nation's mothers, basically, and I don't think that's a fight he could win. But I don't know that Russell's sensible enough to avoid it. In fact, I'm pretty damn sure he's not sensible and won't avoid it.
Russell's pragmatic, and he is aware of what the issues are at the moment, everything that's going on, especially with younger people. And he's getting clicks on these things at the moment. How these things are going to fit into the show, he knows how he'll make them work. So, as I say, I'll reserve judgment until I actually see whatever he makes.
Well, he's bringing us at least 2 trans characters, which are confirmed.
I don't have a problem with that, as long as they don't bring whatever political stuff into the show, and they're there as actors and whatever they're going to play. I don't have an issue with it. Because I know that one of the people's actually been one of the trans people he's got working. He's been on Broadway. He's a really talented actor.
Of course, yeah, of course. I mean, there's also there's that captain of was it Jasmine Finney? Is that the right name?
Jasmine Finney,
yeah.
No, I don't think it was that one. It's the one that's just been cast.
Yeah, the one that's just been announced. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, from what I can see, Jinx Monsoon doesn't seem to be been particularly political. Yeah. They seem to be focused on being a successful entertainer. More power to their elbow. Actually wanting to have a career and entertain people. Gosh,
we're talking about drag and all the rest of it. But, I was one of them. A massive fan of Paul O'Grady when he did Lily.
Oh yeah,
to see him
God rest his soul. God rest his soul.
Yeah, And at the end of the day, it's an act. It's an act. It was very funny.
It's not about the drag. I mean, drag's been non-controversial for decades.
Oh yeah.
Drag is part of our public entertainment tradition, pantomime and so forth.
Yep.
But it's when drag is then used as a political weapon to say that children need to be read to by men who are adult sex performers, wearing drag outfits, reading children's stories to them about how they can have two genders. I mean, that is the problem. That's what's winding society up.
Well, I think what's winding society up largely will be the Daily Mail with that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's true, but it's for chicken and egg, isn't it? The Daily Mail only reacts to what's out there. And so there's definitely a complex set of social factors at play there because it's about children.
I'll be honest with you, John. What I find issues these days is people aren't actually talking to each other about it. They talk at each other. Everyone's got the sort of, their own opinions and whatever else. And we used to sit down and talk about it and find a consensus between us. But you don't.
Yeah, the good old days. The good old days.
Talk at each other, I'm right and you're wrong, and there was always a middle ground, and it seems very hard to find these days.
It is very hard to find. I mean, it's Vila Betkin who's a friend of his channel. The Rabbi from Another Planet is his YouTube channel.
Yeah, I've watched bits and pieces online.
I mean, Zvi's very entertaining guy. His thumbnails are legendary, of course.
Oh, his thumbnails are legendary.
His thumbnails are legendary. But I mean, pretty much every episode he puts out, if he's talking about what some people have said in fandom or so forth, he's always saying, "Come on my show, come and talk to me about it. Let's have this discussion." He wants to have those discussions. But it is extremely hard, verging on impossible. And of course, I've got a lot of mistaken beliefs have been promulgated about me in the Doctor Who fandom. And I completely understand why, because of what I chose to do. I chose to upset people by telling them the truth repeatedly without stopping. That's not something that makes you popular.
No.
I think it's as I say, social media is it's not the real world. Social media, let's be honest, and it's not
so
somewhere it's not somewhere you can have an informed debate, about something. Sadly,
yeah, it is sad.
We have problem being commenting and I talking about someone who knows what's going on with these issues. Lee is very much very up on these issues. Lily Savage is not the same thing as today's drag. Monsoon identifies as a she-they, them, and is highly political. Paul was an old school working class Labour lad and was not a fan of LGBTQ. Which I'm sure is correct.
Well, it was, Paul O'Grady's from, he's from an area I know pretty well. He's from Birkenhead. One over there, they are pretty strong Labour people, and I don't blame them. The Tory party's not done a great deal for them over there. Let's
no, not
county.
Okay, excuse my ignorance because I'm not very familiar with Paul O'Grady's career. Of course, I know who Lily Savage is and so on. And it's very sad news that he's recently passed.
Yeah, it really is really sad.
Am I because I'm not clear in my thinking about this, but am I right in thinking that Paul O'Grady never expressed what his actual sexuality was? He never came out as gay or anything, did he? As far as I know, he had a secret daughter, didn't he? And was in the press just the other day.
He's Paul was when he was sort of 17. I think he said, I read one of his books. He was experimenting, and he got to get pregnant, and that's why he was a dad. To a wonderful daughter.
So, so Darko says, I believe Paul was married to his male partner. Yeah, I just generally don't know, you see, because I don't.
He was married. His first male partner died. I think he had a brain tumor. And then
no.
I can't remember when it was. Might have been
damn.
Or 2010. He met his present partner, and they had. But he was a nice guy, you know.
Oh, he's a lovely man. Lovely man.
That's terrible. I mean, I lost my long-term partner died. You know, I know how awful that is.
There are all sorts, you know. It's the great guys, great people.
Yeah.
And there's the fun, you know. I mean, I'm originally from Liverpool, you know, and you know, it's a great. That city's got a great.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we might be losing Philip again there, but
yeah, we might be.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome back. We thought you might have dropped for a sec, but you're here.
No, you're all right. No, it's no problem. I'm still here. You haven't got rid of
but I mean, it just goes to show, though, doesn't it? Paul O'Grady's career, you know, but being drag, plenty of people have been beloved as drag performers.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, Dame Edward Edbridge would obviously be another major example, but there are many more. But you know, we seem to Paul O'Grady gain that status during more tolerant times, didn't he? You know,
I don't know so much. You know, if you read Paul's books, you know, Paul's been through struggles and stuff like that. You know, he didn't really make it till later on in life. You know, he's had struggles. You know, and he's been hard up, he's been broke, and all the rest of it. You know, so you know, I don't know. You know, I can remember less tolerant times where, you know, if you saw someone dressed as, you know, a man dressed as a woman, people were like, you know, what's. He found it really awkward. I think he's more accepting of it now.
Yeah, I agree. We are now more accepting of it, but
yeah,
you know,
I think that is fair to say. Yes.
I've got to say, when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I used to go to a club in Liverpool called Garland's, and it was for people, trans people, and all the rest of it. And I used to go there because all the kind of girls that I liked, they used to go there because they didn't think there were any men there and to be safe. Well, they weren't, because obviously I went my mate 20.
Sneaky.
Stalking the birds through the gay bar, all that sneaky stuff. You know.
But you know, I was really comfortable with it. I can remember being at a bar, and a guy walked up with a black necklace on. My brother was next to me at the time. My brother was mortified, and I was really. I thought, you know, at the end of the day, you know, whatever makes people happy, you know, it's
exactly.
Well, as the saying goes, when in Rome. Well, that definitely sounds like one of those circumstances where that applies. What in Rome?
Indeed.
But you know, I used to go there. It was a great place. I met, you know, and some of the costumes that were absolutely fabulous. You'd be like,
oh yeah.
But you must have spent all night, you know, getting made up and wearing these fab costumes in this place. You know, you think to yourself, you've got some admiration for that. You know what I mean? That they've got the, you know, that creativity within them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that.
It's just, I think it's such a shame, but you know, the fandom has been so abused, and that trust in production is so low. Yeah. But we're now sensitive to whether casting somebody who's a drag act is going to be a problem. I was saying to someone just this morning, but when Matt Lucas was cast as Nardal, I didn't think to myself, oh no, there's a gender. I thought, oh, here's a light comedic part.
Yeah.
And his, that was all it was. And I mean, I find Matt Lucas personally to be a bit of a pillar,
he's such a talented guy.
But he is very talented, exactly.
Have you ever seen him in Les Mis? He plays a part in Les Mis.
I haven't seen that actually.
Oh, he's brilliant, John. He's brilliant. I mean, these are talented people. I think we still have that thing where we put people in boxes, but you could, somebody could have an amazing voice or some talent with, whatever. And until you see that talent, then you judge them on what they can do.
Well, that's very much how it feels to be a socially conservative Doctor Who fan. It is put in a box and not allowed to show our full potential.
It should not matter who you vote for or anything like that if you're a fan of Doctor Who. It should not matter.
But the thing is, it does, doesn't it?
Unfortunately,
if you want to be a creative creating content under license for Doctor Who, it completely matters. That's
ridiculous. That it should be based on talent, not who you vote for or anything like that.
Yeah, agreed. Should be like that.
Well, I mean, there's been so many things have been said that have come out of Big Finish or other things, and there's political biases of people like Nick Briggs are so very blatant, but it is difficult to believe that anybody who was right wing could successfully get a project completed by them, because if nothing else, if the rabid part of Doctor Who fandom that heard that somebody who voted for Boris Johnson was going to produce a story for Big Finish, they'd be out to get it cancelled before it even came out. So these are problems.
That's sad. At the end of the day, the thing is.
Well, the good news is they're being less listened to.
Fandom. They have to sell DVDs and stuff like that. Whatever they, I don't know really about what they do really, but they've got to be commercial. They're a commercial organisation.
When Gareth Roberts was mugged and cancelled, I mean, he pretty much walked into that. There wasn't much he could do about it. It was very effective. But they've been trying to cancel Trevor Blacksendale the last few months. The Big Finish blatantly ignored it. Blatantly told him to go cry about it, basically. So that's good. There is a sign of some change starting to happen, but that is something that really needs to change. Because I think we're missing a lot of talent and ability.
We are.
That should be.
I think you've got to be really careful. I think it's probably better not to, when you're making commercial things, not to put your political point of view in there. I think it's beneficial.
Unfortunately, that is what you have to do if you are serious about succeeding in the creative arts. Is if you really don't hold radical left viewpoints, you need to lie about them or hide them. Unfortunately, that's where society is.
It's very sad, isn't it? But you find like the USA, it's very, very split politically, and I don't think the answer lies on either side. I think
it doesn't.
Political reform is what's needed, so it represents everybody, not just one side or the other.
Yeah, agree with that 100%. Absolutely.
We've had the same electoral system in the UK now for
ever.
170 odd years, I think, this is the last big change. Well, women's suffrage would be the last big change.
Yeah,
that was the single biggest expansion of the electorate. So I mean, we've had the political system's been unchanged for about 100 years.
Absolutely.
It's been, I mean, in its core elections for Westminster anyway, it's been expanded, and it obviously had European elections added and now removed, and various devolved governments and things have been set up, but by and large, the first past the post system is unreformed. Yes.
Indeed, it does need to change.
Well, let's move along. Let's get back to Doctor Who, and should we talk about your journey finding us missing stories?
Indeed.
Go ahead.
Yes, that'd be interesting.
Well, where did it start? I mean, because obviously Doctor Who, you're not only looking for Doctor Who, you've recovered hundreds of items of missing footage of all sorts of shows.
Yeah, we've recovered quite a lot of stuff. And I think with Doctor Who, if you talk about Doctor Who, I don't come from, I'll start with me, I don't come from a privileged background. I come from a one-parent family, and we didn't have much money. We didn't have hardly any money. But the one thing I used to do, and I think they were about 15 pence at the time, I used to buy the Target books, the Doctor Who Target books, and I used to collect them. I love them. I love them. I think I bought something like the 10th Planet. I remember buying that. Planet of the Spiders, I bought that. And I was one of those people that was an avid collector of things, if I could get it. And I used to collect these books. And I always used to think to myself, because there was a little bit in the front of the book that said, that this was previously, shown by BBC Television. I thought, the BBC must have all these programs, and maybe one day show them again. We can all watch them. Of course, little did I know that the BBC hadn't kept them and had found them worthless and thrown them out, which was, it's a really sad.
Such innocent thoughts, Philip. Surely they wouldn't do that. Surely they wouldn't throw all of Doctor Who away.
Well, this is what we thought, wasn't it? So, no, I think basically you've got to be really committed to search out missing television programs, and especially travel the world and do that. You've got to be really committed, and it's a hell of a lot of effort, to do these sorts of things.
Well, people have described you as a kind of Indiana Jones figure. How much truth is in that?
I think there's certainly an element of it in that. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree.
Damn,
with that.
That's cool. That is so damn cool.
That was somebody else that put that label on, but it is very much like that, and it's you're following leads, half leads, information coming from television stations, old paperwork that you're finding, at stations. People send you bits and pieces, so you're basically building a jigsaw of how programs, moved around globally, how things are set.
And persuading people to help you must be a huge part of it. If you've got to try and get access to.
I'll be honest with you, John. I've always been quite lucky in that, I've always got on. I'm a people person. That's who I am, really. I'm a people person. I get on really well with people, and I tend to, I've made a lot of very, very strong connections, within the television industry overseas. I've made it, I've been really successful at it.
Excuse me. This is too good a comment, Philip. We have to raise this one. I could imagine Phillip Morris running down a hill with a Doctor Who video in one hand and a ball rolling after him.
You know what? It's funny you should recently sent me a load of Doctor Who pneumatic tapes. I think they were Tom Baker ones. Someone sent me that from a TV station. Basically, they'll just send them to me. I'll keep them just for the sake of keeping them. So they sent them back to me. So there was no big rolling ball behind me. I assure you of that. But I have been in one or two sticky situations once or twice. Because obviously some of the places you do end up trying, the conflict areas and things like that, and security's in it.
So how close to sticky did you get? I mean, conflict areas. I mean, we're going in to grab videos under fire. What's going on?
No, I don't think it's like that. But I mean, in 2005, before obviously I started TIA and everything else, I worked in the offshore oil and gas industry. I was a heavy lift crane operator, helicopter landing officer. And I was kidnapped in Nigeria. I was actually taken hostage by Boko Haram.
Holy crap.
Jesus.
Well, absolutely. So you've got to say to yourself, then a friend of mine says, you were brave going back to Nigeria after what had happened. But it was, I'll take a line from a John Pertwee thing, where John Pertwee had to face his fears. Well, I had to face mine too. I had to sort of go back there and say, well, you can't be afraid of this. You've got to go back, and that's basically what I did.
Wow.
Right.
But,
I mean,
I took that line from Planet of the Spiders because I thought, that I was in that situation. You must face your fears. It's better than going on and having that in the back of your mind.
I'm going to ask Jobby, react to this, please. Because I mean, I can feel it going on in your brain. Tell me what you're thinking right now, Jobby.
It's because obviously I don't know whether Philip knows I'm an ex-military man, infantry. You see, so there are times. Yeah, there are times where, I know the feeling where you have to stand there and go, I really don't want to do this, but you got to, and you got to face your fears, and it's just, you've got no choice. That's the thing, you've got no choice. You've got to do it. So,
exactly.
But I feel the dilemma because it is a big thing that really does.
Gobby, you'll understand this. I mean, when I was kidnapped, basically, I'll give you a rundown to what happened. Basically, I was in bed. I'd taken the James Bond collection out with me to watch. I had these 21 films, which they were at the time.
Nice.
And I was watching The Spy Who Loved Me. And basically, the big submarine shoot up scene near the end came on. I was half asleep. And the next thing, the alarm went off on the rig I worked on. The alarm went off, go to muster stations. I opened the door on my cabin. And there was a guy there. He must have been almost 7 foot tall with a red bandana around his head.
Oh, shit.
An AK-47 bullets strapped around his waist, and he just basically grabbed me and just dragged me out. I was marched outwards onto the main deck of this rig, and there were just all the windows had been shot out. There were guns going off everywhere.
Oh no!
See, this is what happens when you're watching James Bond.
Yeah,
and it's all going on in the room, but you don't realise there's a water outside.
This was absolutely surreal. I was led out onto the main deck, and the guy said to me, he goes, "Get on your hands and knees." He had an AK-47, had my hands behind my head. He had an AK-47 to the back of my head, and he said, "Tonight's your last night. Tonight you're going to die." And I looked around me, and I could see my friends, my colleagues. And the first thing that comes into your head, what can I do? What can I do? And I thought, well, if I go for him and something goes wrong and someone else gets shot, that's on me. If I get shot, then that's no good. If I jump over the side, I'm offshore Nigeria. There's probably sharks in the water, so that's
not a good idea.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
The options start, they start coming in pretty. So, as I say, it was an interesting situation to say the least. But it's, you always look for something you can do, and in that situation at that time, there was not much I could do. So.
There isn't. You just have to go with it, unfortunately.
You just got to go with it. I mean, it was interesting at the time. We had a Navy ship that was guarding us, and they surrendered. They threw their arms over the side and surrendered. And we were like, "What the hell's going on?"
Typical Navy. That's all I'm going to say.
Was that
Navy.
Nigerian Navy, or was that?
Absolutely, Nigerian.
Typical Navy.
Absolutely not.
Oh boy. Well, it could feel love about something like that, sort of.
Well, of course,
so many years after the fact, but
absolutely, whatever happens to you in life, you've always got to take that situation. You have to turn it round to your advantage.
You got no choice. You got no choice. You have to do it.
You can either let that situation or whatever's happened to you define you, or you can take it and say, "I'm not going to let this define me because I'm in control here. I'm going to take this and put it behind me, and I'm going to use this to move forward."
How long did they hold you for, Philip?
We were held. It was about. I think it could be about 4 or 5 days. We were held in the Delta. It was quite, I'll be honest with you, I've got a strange sense of humour, and we were led into the jungle when they brought us. I mean, it was if I start really where it happened, they put us into these small boats at 1 o'clock in the morning, these outboard boats, and they basically just sailed off into the night with us in these boats.
Oh, not good.
The boat. And basically, we didn't know where we were going. We were just face down in these boats. We had guns to the back of our heads. And we were taken towards the Niger Delta.
Right,
And
yeah.
as the sun came up, there was a fishing boat, and these guys obviously spoke the local language. We were talking to this woman. She basically pointed, where the beach was. So they took us back up. We came up to the mouth of the Niger Delta, and there was, I can only describe the guy. There was like hundreds of people along the shore, and they were, it was like something out one of those old Tarzan films. Screaming and shouting, and there was a small guy there with a lot of white paint on his face, and he had a bottle of Johnny Walker whiskey. And as we dragged out the boat, he sort of did some sort of ritual with us before we were taken into sort of custody on the beach there in one of these mud huts we were taken to. It was a very strange experience, but the funny
was he trying to protect you with his ritual?
I have no idea to this day whether he was trying to, but I just thought it was a terrible waste of good booze.
I was just saying that's a terrible waste of whiskey.
Absolutely. But it was the tool pusher.
Well, that's it, Missy. I mean, shamanically, if you're going to blow the good stuff, it must have been an important spell.
Oh well, to this day, I shall never know.
And you're never going to go back and ask him, are you?
No. I'm
never going to go back and ask him. No, that's definitely something I'm not going to do. But I mean,
but what a story, Philip. I mean, people would be quite forgiving if you said, right, that's it, I'll go back to Blighty and never leaving these shores again.
Yeah,
but instead you keep on getting out there.
No, not. That's not how I look at things. I think, a lot of, in life's not, black and white. A lot of things happen in your life, and bad things. You must never let them define you. You've got to get up and okay, brush myself down. Let's pick it up and go again.
It's very true.
In whatever situation you're in, I think that's a good way of looking at it. And then whatever's going to happen in your life, then you're doing it on your terms.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a question for you, Philip.
Questions are mounting up, actually.
Yes. Problem Bean's been asking me to please ask him a question. Right, he says, do you think there are lost episodes in the hands of... Oh, God, I can't even read that word.
Covetous is that word.
Oh, sorry, yes. I'm not that good with English. I'm a soldier. I don't speak well. Fans.
Your posh words, Lee.
Yeah, damn you, posh word boy. That own them will not relinquish them until they die. That may be they end up bagged up and thrown away after they die. So, in other words,
this is a fear a lot of people have. This is a fear a lot of people have. There are missing episodes in the hands of private collectors. The private collectors are not as young as they were, and if they pass on, what they have may be lost in the process of dissolving their estates, or flogged off to somebody else in private and never see the light of day, or whatever. This is about. I mean, we could perhaps come to this, but I mean, I don't want us to rush to get to this place, but. This is something that a lot of people would love you to address. This question of where missing episodes might still be found, because when we spoke to Ian Levine, his view was that there wasn't anything else that was going to come now from TV stations. Are you on the same page?
I would say I'm not sure where Ian gets his information from, but obviously
can't speak to that myself either. That was just what he expressed.
My ear's a lot closer to the ground than Ian's is, I would say.
Right.
That's in my opinion. Ian did say, there would always be 108 missing episodes. Now we're at 97. I think Ian sometimes says things like that, and he's quite entitled to say. Basically, to make people think, my personal view is, we're not there yet.
There aren't any Doctor Who fans on the planet who can say they've given more to fandom than Ian Levine. We'd have. I don't think anyone can take that away from him. His dedication to the show from the age of 10 is its own legacy for Ian.
Absolutely, I would not argue with that. I think Ian's been, in a good way, a nuisance.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, he's annoyed the right people at the right times, including in getting the show cancelled, continued back in the 80s with his single.
I think what I would say is Ian's made
Which
a
he hates,
use of himself, but in an affectionate, and I mean that affectionately, you know, where people have gone, oh no, this guy's here again like that, but he's got talking, and then so what's he looking for? And then he's raised the issue where if he hadn't have been there, it wouldn't have been raised. It wouldn't have been raised as much, I don't think.
Absolutely. I you know what he tried to get the BBC not to throw the episodes away in the first place, but in the time it took him to achieve that, they scrapped 200.
I think if you look at that, I think if you speak to Sue Molden, Sue Molden sent a memo to BBC Enterprises for that not to happen. Sue Molden was aware she'd already been sent material by somebody who would.
But it was the woman who was in the job before Sue who was the problem. If I recall,
but she wasn't. Hang on a minute. If we clear this up, okay? So the woman was that, and she wasn't the first person there. When you send these things around the world, and there are strict rules with these, they are sent to another place, to return to the BBC, or they are destroyed because the copyright has to be protected. That's part of the original contractual agreement with the. Now, when these programs had finished, they've been sold everywhere. Then, they have, Villiers' house where these things were kept. It's the size of probably your front room, John.
Yes.
It's about that size, and then you've got new programs coming in. So the old programming, you can't sell it anymore. So protect the copyright, and these things are thrown away.
There just wasn't a system in place to think about the future, was there? That's the thing. They were just thinking about the commercial sales and what they could sell.
For copies, they thought these programs were copies.
Yes.
And that's all that they had. They didn't think these were master material, the only master material that still existed. So there's the misconception with these things.
So there's a level of institutional foobar about the situation as well, that the left hand didn't properly know what the right hand was doing.
That still goes on at the BBC to this day.
That's never going to stop with BBC, is it?
It still goes on, if I play fair here, this was going on at the ITV companies also.
Yes.
They jumped an awful lot of stuff. All the sort of independent companies around the UK. So this is not a thing that's special to the BBC.
Yes.
It's sad that it happened and the way it happened, and a lot of things again are through miscommunication. It's sadly that just seems to be the way of the world. With television programs, one person, we'll get rid of this. I heard the same stories when Pebble Mill was closed in Birmingham. A lot of things were thrown into skips there. Fortunately, I think the person that saved a lot of it was Paul Venezis. Saved at Pebble Mill in Birmingham when he was working there. He was lucky he was there and he had the foresight to report it and make sure these things were kept.
Well, so many people have done so. There's so many people have had an impact on every reason that we have the Doctor Who that we have. I mean, when did you first decide to really get out there and look for it? I mean, when did you, from when you were buying the Target books as a boy, the Hot 10th Planet, that's really cool. It'd be nice to see that again one day. And what was the point when you became active?
I think I've mentioned it before. It was because I was working all around the world.
Yes.
I was going to all sorts of places, Argentina, Mexico, all.
You were in the area. You were in the area, basically.
Area, so it was a case of I wondered if there's something that that I can do at those early stages, without really having a full understanding. I think when you really go into a at first, there's an element of an element of I'll wing it kind of thing.
Yes.
I'll wing it and see what I get to, and then you kind of find your feet with it. And the thing you're in at that stage is what are these television stations, what do they need?
Just one moment, Philip. Problem being, we are definitely going to get to your questions. We have to work around to these things, you know. Not you straight in there like a bull. Patience, man. Patience.
Patience.
See, I'm working through that. Here's the next question. So,
Right, okay.
so how long was it from when you started looking to when you actually found your first piece of Doctor Who and went bingo? How long was that process? How long were you looking for? Just searching.
Oh, that's a good question.
See?
I think maybe in this maybe 3 or 4 years possibly.
I mean, I just love to ask questions like that because it speaks to your character. It's why we love you, frankly. Those of us who know you will love you. You know, because you're just so goddamn dedicated. You know, it's this bulldog spirit. You know, people goddamn kidnap you. You don't care. You're not letting them put that off. You're in the area. You decide to apply yourself, and you're looking and you're looking and you're looking for years, and you don't give up.
No,
we're not worthy, Philip. Respect.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. You know, I mean, there's a lesson here for everybody. As
John,
what you can do when you challenge yourself.
You've got to remember, with me, it's not just about Doctor Who. It's about episodes in total, really. I mean,
so you were looking for lots of things, obviously.
Yeah, I was talking to Matthew Sweet, Dr. Matthew Sweet, 10 years ago. And I did say to him at the time, I said, you wouldn't expect to go into the British Library and ask for and then to say, oh, we haven't got it, we've thrown it out. You know, you'd be mortified. And I said, but that's what happened to our television system, you know, our archive, you know, and the more we can get back in, you know, in sound or in vision, you know, the better informed future generations will be when they need to download it or, you know, stream it or watch it, you know, and see what things were like. And culturally, that's important.
Well, these things should not be lost. It's as simple as that, you know, and everyone knows that what happened was a mistake.
It is, Johnny. It is as simple as that. But unfortunately, we are where we are.
Yes. And technology had a huge amount to do with it. I mean, I subscribe to Paramount Plus because I'm watching the current series of Picard Series 3.
I've been watching that too, John, and I've really enjoyed the last sort of. I think I've watched season 3. I've not seen season 1 and 2. I've seen season 3, and I've been really
don't bother with season 1 and 2. Don't
stick with 3.
You don't ruin 3 is all you need. Yeah, 3 is completely good in itself. Yes, but at the same time, you know, I've been getting annoyed because they don't show the episode until 24 hours after the United States. Even though I'm subbed, I can't see it in Europe until the next day. So I've got to dodge Twitter. So I've been resisting temptation to hit the Pirate Bay and pirate it so I don't have to dodge Twitter to a day before watching the episode. I'm already paying for a streaming service to watch. Okay.
Right, okay.
But the whole thing occurred to me that we can't lose this media like we lost this other media, because it goes out there, it disseminates so broadly and so widely and in such high quality. But we can have confidence that we're always going to be able to find Picard Series 3. As long as we have a civilization, there'll be some record of Picard Series 3. You know, modern output is kind of cancel proof because it's so diverse and out there and it can be recorded so easily. It's such a huge difference to when nobody had the ability to record things, to preserve things. You know, the system as it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Hang on, John. We did have stuff, because I do keep a lot of old video machines, and I think my earliest video machines from '64. I've got a Peto Scott. I've got a couple of Peto Scott machines actually, and as I say, they're 1-inch machines. and they were available from 64.
Oh, of course, the technology was there, but it was very rare and very expensive. Until later.
It was, but they're like your politicians and your pop stars and all the rest of them. They
had one, yeah.
You know, so the recordings do turn up. I mean, a few years ago, the recording of Till Death Us Do Part recorded on a Peter Scott machine. It was a lovely recording.
Ah.
So, winding this back to the question I asked, the initial question I asked was what Ian had said in his interview, which he didn't feel there was anything else out there to be found in TV stations. You've sort of said that, hey, don't be so sure. So, are you currently continuing to investigate TV stations?
I am still. I not investigate. I do work with TV stations.
Yeah, sure. Well, liaise with, work with, of course.
Yeah, okay. I'll tell you why. Because back in the day, before we had video and all the rest of it, if you wanted to buy a television program, we used to send out what was called the BBC. It was what we call audition prints. So they might send you 1 or 2 episodes of something. I think Doctor Who was. It's been recorded that they sent 2 episodes of Marco Polo to Iran. They were audition prints, but normally those things are not recorded as being sent out, so they wouldn't be official information.
So it's more of a freebie sample than a sale. So wouldn't have been recorded in the same way.
No, not at all. You just sent 1 or 2 episodes out as an example. So the station can either watch it and buy any more.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of potential for anything could be out there in any of the Commonwealth countries that the BBC used to sell to.
Well, yeah, even non-Commonwealth countries, you know what I mean? You never know where something's ended. I've found all sorts of things, so I thought, how's that ended up here? It's...
So it's right to say that you're actively liaising with some potential stations at this time that might still lead to something.
I wouldn't say exclusively with Doctor Who, but
But in general, when Doctor Who might come up in the net, because you're going through everything, aren't you? You're fine tooth combing everything we've got.
As Captain Kirk would say in Star Trek, there are always possibilities.
Indeed.
Sorry, he's doing his nut in the chat. I can't. So, private collectors, ? This is what they want to know about. What can you tell us about private collectors?
Private collectors are a wonderful, wonderful collection of people with their own private film collections. They're very private people. Last sort of 30 years or so, maybe probably longer, 50 years, they've been harassed really a lot about Doctor Who. And sometimes quite abusively about, sort of, what if you've got this, you've got no right to have it or anything like that. I feel it's the wrong approach.
This is Doctor Who fans have been guilty of harassing them, or?
Yeah, I think it has happened. They've been labelled hoarders and things like that. But I don't see them as being hoarders because they know how to look after film. That's number one. Most of the time, they wouldn't really have Doctor Who episodes because they like movies. And a Doctor Who is, it's always in separate episodes, 25-minute, duration. It's not something, but they may have something. You never know. These things, when they've always turned up from private collectors, you'll always find they've always turned up in pairs. There's always been 2 episodes together.
Interesting.
Private collector, yes, and you can never be sure for the simple reason that was these things were thrown into skips. The skips were open overnight. Collectors. I mean, I know film dealers who've told me they used to go to London from the north of England in a van and pick things up because they were tipped off that things were going into skips, and they would go and pick them up. That's common knowledge.
Well, it's supposed to be common sense, if it can leave it lying around.
So things over the years. So people say to me, "Can you be?"
But is this an aspect of a private collector which is people miss and we don't understand? Is that they have a personal relationship with what they've collected. So, you know, if someone said, "Oh, you've got an episode of Marco Polo, you swine, and you shouldn't have it," but they've got the memory of climbing in a skip to rescue the damn thing.
I don't think it's that.
Or whatever else story might be involved with how they came to if they had it.
You're looking at it purely from a Doctor Who fan point of view. A film collector might not be might have it. He's probably not even aware that the stuff
may not have the emotional relationship with the material at all.
Quite possibly.
Mm.
Quite possibly. You know, Doctor Who fans think that, you know, everyone must be aware of you know, missing Doctor Who episodes. They're really not.
Most people don't even know there's anything missing.
Absolutely.
No, this is it.
You know, if I talk to Joe Ordinary about being a Doctor Who fan, quite often people are surprised that there's episodes missing. They've never heard that.
Yeah. Sad state of affairs. You know, the programs are missing, but you know, we are where we are. You know, it's, you know, I love Doctor Who. You know, especially the classic series. You know, and you know, I do want to see things return. You know, so you know the fans can enjoy them. But,
so, I mean, Doctor Who fans' attitudes, some bad attitudes from some fans, may have soured the situation. Has the BBC also contributed to problems with collectors and how they feel about returning episodes?
I don't think the BBC have. I think the people working around, so Doctor Who fans working for the BBC, have done an awful lot over the years to try and, you know, at first people would say, well, if you've got one, you know, you'd basically be prosecuted. I think that, you know, the kind of the fans that work for the BBC or have worked for the BBC have tried to get the air with that over the years. So now, you know, there's, you know, if someone wants to give something back, you can give it back. And you know, there's no sign of a prosecution or anything like that with copyright. But I think originally there was. I think a lot of people, usually because of the case with Bob Monkhouse in the early 70s, Bob Monkhouse had a big court case over his private film collection, and that created a lot of bad feeling within the film collecting community.
Interesting. So what Bob Monkhouse? What was his case trying to do? What was he trying to achieve with it?
Well, I think I may be wrong here, but I think Bob Monkhouse had a Buster Keaton film. I think it's possibly a Buster Keaton. It was the only copy in the world. And when the police took his films, they checked his films. Said, "No, that's all fine, but where's the film?" He said, "I don't have it." I said, "It's you know, well, if you can't prove you own it, then we're going to destroy it." And sadly, I think Scotland Yard destroyed that print, and it was the only surviving print in the world.
Oh, that was helpful.
Nice. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that.
well done, Claude.
Prove because the company apparently in Hollywood that made that program.
What was that supposed to be? The Judgment of Solomon. Oh, look, it's a film. Let's put a match to it. You know,
as I say, but you know, most film collectors are, you know, they might have a couple of hundred films, so you know, they might not be aware. If you've got one or two 25-minute Doctor Who's there, they may not be aware.
Yeah, they might just be sitting there in the back. Yeah.
We just had a nice comment pop up there. Sorry. I was just going to say what the Papa Lads 444244. Marco Polo is older than the Laurel and Hardy films were to me in the 1970s. People tend to forget how old that is to kids today. Nice rent to Ghost Jester as well.
Yes, indeed.
That's an interesting sense of proportion, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You know, I mean, to me, Buster Keaton and Laurel and Hardy as a kid were like, oh God, that's freaking ancient.
Yeah, well,
I used to put it on BBC Two.
I can just interject there for a second.
Sorry, yes. Sorry.
The Laurel and Hardy movies have been duplicated worldwide. Hundreds of times. Marco Polo was not.
Yes, and that's a big difference as to why the
There were quite a few prints struck of Marco Polo, but you know, we're talking, you know, in maybe a dozen, and that's probably it.
Mm.
You know, I don't think there'd be a great deal more than that. But you know,
Yeah.
I'm not saying, you know, I'm not saying there's no chance of anything existing. I think with certainty, I don't think anybody can say that, and that's because when things were sent back to the BBC and when they were thrown out, they were thrown into skips. People went in this.
Yes.
So you know, it's a bit of it's a catch-22 situation. No, you can't be 100% sure. I think I can guarantee within certain private collectors, I mean, do have material, without a shadow of a doubt.
So we've talked about the possibility that there are private collectors who don't really might not say know what they have, or if they have some Doctor Who, might not particularly see it as especially important. They might not consider it the most important part of their collections. But there must presumably be opposite. There must be some private collectors who very much know what they have, if they have it. I mean, is it this scenario people have in their minds that they're...
That's conjecture.
Yes,
You know,
of course.
it's conjecture. You know, because we don't know either way. So you must, for me, you have to keep an open mind. And you know, I always, when I meet private collectors, and you know, I've seen a lot. I do know private collectors that do have missing material.
Yes.
I'm not someone to say, tell everybody this guy's got missing material. But, you know, I'll let the guy know. I said, you know, I think that's missing. Really like that, you know. And I know who he is. And, you know, if at any point in the future, I'll probably end up with those programs from him.
Now, disaster area here has gone and said it. Right,
what has happened to Web of Fear episode 3? Right.
There you go, Philip. You know how fandom feels about this. You tackle it. You tell him what's happened to Web of Fear episode 3.
So when the footprints of Enemy of the World and Web of Fear were discovered, Web of Fear was complete. Enemy of the World was complete. We thought there should be another story there as well, and it should have been the Abominable Snowman.
Oh.
All together.
Oh, my heart.
The Abominable Snowman wasn't there. We don't know why to this day. There was no information on that. However, Web 3, the station. I had to leave the station to go back to Abuja at the time for a meeting with the Director General. The station manager took a couple of the films off the shoot while one of my guys was there and took them to his office. He didn't give a reason for that. So when the films were sent back, that was missing. I had the information that he'd taken it to his office, that and another film. Basically, I asked him, I asked the guy, I said, you know, where are these programs? And he just replied to me and he goes, oh, I put them back. And I said, he didn't put them back because he didn't come back otherwise. I said, I took everything from that archive. It was sent back to us, to the UK for process.
Yeah, it sounds dodgy, doesn't it? It sounds like he backdoored it for eBay.
John, what was most interesting, I'd let somebody know where I was at that station within fandom. We're not going to mention names.
No, of course not.
Anyway, this guy turned around to me and said, I don't know about missing episodes. And as soon as he said that, I said, I never mentioned anything like that. Where did you come out with that from?
That
is a clue.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a big giveaway.
So my guess is, you know, somebody had tipped somebody off. They call the station. Some money's exchanged hands, and it's in the hands of a private collector.
And assumably that's Web 3 and all 6 episodes of Abominable Snowmen. So that's 7 episodes.
I don't know. I can't say that's the Abominable Snowman because that I did not.
But I mean, if that was true, if everything in the initial report was correct, if that initial report was correct, then it was there, but you just wasn't there when you got there.
It's possible. I mean, I can't comment on that. I can only comment on what I found.
We shall have to We shall have to form our own thoughts about it. Yes.
Webb was completely spent there. It's in the hands of a private.
I mean, you can't be more precise than that. It's in. There you are. You want to know what happened to Web of Fear episode 3? It's in the hands of a private collector. That's the answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's in the hands of somebody who's pretty well connected within fandom, I would say.
Right. There you go.
Oh, the intrigue thickens.
The thing is, I spoke to a friend of mine, and I was like, "What can I do about this?" And they said, "You could just make it public, because that means that then, if they want to come out with we've found this, all of a sudden everyone goes, well, we know where you found it."
Yeah.
You know, the last thing you want to see, it was interesting. I think.
It's a bit like the Mona Lisa. If you nicked it, it'd be too hot to fence.
Yeah, basically. But at the time, I think
unless you had 6.
Ian Levine put an article in Doctor Who magazine about he'd got in touch with a private collector, and he was in touch with him, and he had copies of all these episodes. He had a copy of Enemy of the World. He had the copy of Web of Fear 3, and they were and basically they were all. I don't know what happened, but it was well publicised, and then all of a sudden everything just went quiet.
Well, unfortunately, there's been con men as well, haven't there? You know, they do exploiting fandom time and time again on this.
Yeah, of course.
We've been friends on Twitter for.
At some point, it will surface.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. But it seems like a bit of a shame, really. The fact that they may have been purloined off the shelf has made them too hot to come back to us. It's a bit of irony if that is the truth about that.
Well, I've published the photographs of all 12 episodes. I've published those.
Right. So there is a record. Yes.
We knew they were there. We published the photograph of all 12 episodes, which we took at the time. And at the moment, it's one of those things for us. It's on a back burner. I don't sort of want to point fingers at anyone, because I just do the right thing and return it and make sure complete the story for the fans. It's Nicholas Courtney's first appearance as the Brigadier. It's really important to get that back. Just for a historical sense.
It is a historical episode, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It should come back. So, as I say, it's something that it's on a back burner. At some point, I sincerely do believe, it will come.
Well, we've been friends on Twitter for some years, and one of the things that I said to you when I very first started to chat with you was that I would not ask you for any information on what stories might be missing or anything like that, because it occurred to me, common sense fella that I am, but for a man in your position, having to protect information like you do, the last thing you're going to want is anybody, being a prat, basically badgering you about, I just said this, to be sensible of the whole thing, basically. So I've never asked you to name names, on what episodes may or may not be out there. And I'm not going to do that today, because I know that's not a question that you would answer. But I do have a question that I hope you could answer.
Of course, please answer.
Which is, giving this whatever level of certainty you want, like very certain or slightly certain or maybe, or, however, what percentage of the missing episodes do you believe are still out there to come back to us? I mean, it's too much to hope that it could all be found. Some of it has to be lost, doesn't it?
I don't think there's not a chance of it all being found. I think there's more to come back. I wouldn't like to put a number on it, but I definitely think there's more to come back.
Well, just a sense of what you might have a feel of.
Yeah.
As what you have a sense might be out there against the full 97 episodes. What sort of proportion of the total do you reckon's in play as potentially could still be found?
I think anything from probably the first 2 seasons. I think probably some of the later episodes, maybe some of the later Trout episodes, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
But not so good for seasons 3, 4, and maybe 5.
I can only say what I think is more likely. So the earlier stuff I think is more likely. Later Troughton is possibly more likely. I'm not saying it's unlikely for anything earlier, but I'm just more where it's more likely to come from.
It's very interesting insight to have. Is there a particular reason that you think the earlier and the later are more likely than the middle?
The later Troughton stuff, I would think, because it was quite late in the day, it was still being televised in '75, so quite late in the day. So, the BBC weren't actively looking to get things sent back at that time, and sort of end up getting things were more or less forgotten about. So anything around about the '70s, that sort of time period, maybe. It's a situation where you can't really give one answer to.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
Because I mean, I could give you 10 things, and you'd be totally fascinated by them, because they're basically things that point in so many different directions, where things I know went. There are people that I still speak to that worked within the BBC back in the day, and they've given me invaluable information, where stuff, how stuff was moved around, and how people even back in the day used to help themselves to all sorts of things. So not a definitive answer. I think where Ian will say, "Oh, there's no more to be found," you can't. That's absolutely. There's not a chance you can say that.
I don't know that he'd have said never say never. I just feel, I mean, he certainly felt it wasn't likely there was anything else going to come from TV stations, didn't he, Copy? It's definitely
but the truth is, anything's possible, isn't it?
Exactly.
And anything's possible.
God, he'd be like anybody else. He doesn't care where it would come from. Any episode come back, Ian would be
anything. I think everybody would,
and rightly so.
Yes. Okay, guys, listen. I'm going to tell you a story now.
Oh,
and this will fascinate you.
Right then.
We're all ears.
1975. Villiers House. That's where all your doctors, or most of them, they had a clear out, and they brought a skip company in.
Yeah.
And the skip company was there for 4 days, filling skips with 16mm films.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, a guy worked for the skip company, films, because he said his boss helped himself to the titles he recognised, and he was selling these in a local newspaper in London.
Blimey.
Yeah.
Those films didn't go to landfill.
Right, so they are right.
What the BBC used to do, and they still do now, they get outside to come in and clear everything out. And that's happened back then. I'm not saying there was any Doctor Who there. Yeah?
But there's a possibility.
A pretty high possibility.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That place was cleared out, and the owner of the skip company basically helped himself to the titles he recognized.
Wow.
So earlier in the interview, the question was raised about people's fear that this material's, some of it's in the hands of private collectors, and what if they pass on and the material is lost? And just one moment, I'm just going to have to dip out a sec. I'll be right back.
Oh, right, mate. Yeah, no worries. Well, I'll tell you what. Shall I actually bring in Goldenagedgeek to ask you some questions, because he's been sat there like a good, patient little lad, and he's not said a damn thing. So, Goldenagedgeek, it's all yours, mate.
Well, I just wanted to ask Philip about something. One of your recommendations that Doctor Who should maybe look to go to the big screen, perhaps a reboot of the franchise would be best. I think it could go well, but I see it as one or two ways. It could go really well, but it could also be like something that happened with the original Star Trek movies, because I've just started watching them for the first time, so it's very fresh in my mind. A popular criticism of all of the Star Trek films, excluding the motion picture, is that they very much diverted away from the original sort of vision that Gene Roddenberry had, that it was supposed to show people going out there discovering new life, and it turned more into a generic sort of action flick. So I think one of the things that could happen if Doctor Who was to go to the big screen would be an over-reliance on action and eye candy, and not staying true to the original story, which is very much similar to, Star Trek, about adventure and that sort of thing.
Well, can I just interject? The thing with Star Trek, when it first came out onto the big screen, Paramount had been looking to make a Star Trek motion for quite some time. Now, Star Trek was in development at the time for a second TV series. It was coming back to Star Trek 2. It was a television series. And Star Wars came out. It was a massive, and they said, all sitting around, said, what do we have like that? And someone, I think it was Michael Eisner, turned around, because it was Star Trek. And I think the guy in charge who said that. And so they were looking at a Star Trek movie. What they made in that first Star Trek movie was actually the TV pilot.
Yes, it was. Yes.
It was very cerebral. It was just full of special effects. The ship. It's not till you got to the second Star Trek movie, which I think is the best of the lot. Which is
by far.
Which basically goes back to what Star Trek was. And that movie was basically just, it was, I think it was the same set, a couple of sets, just set on the bridge of the ship. But that's absolutely right. Would Doctor Who make it on the big screen? Yeah, damn right. Doctor Who would make it on the big screen.
Of course it would.
Yes. Going back, if you go back to the classic series, and you take, where it started, and you get it, scripts right, you get, it's basically full of the original show. Obviously, with a budget, and directed really well, and everything else, and made really well, I think it'd be a worldwide hit.
Pyramids of Mars, the movie.
Well, you could do Pyramids of Mars later on, but I think if you start with the beginning, you take something,
What about the Web Planet?
And just do the Daleks.
Do the Daleks.
Fabulous.
It would absolutely fabulous. But I mean, I could see a sort of motion a movie series that sort of took maybe some of that 60s and 70s aesthetic and modernized it, but had that kind of a bit of uniqueness to it. I mean, I think it would be very distinctive.
I think, do you know what, John? I think the problem with Doctor Who is it's not something you can modernize. It's something. It is what it is. It's an old-fashioned character. He's an old-fashioned hero. He dresses in a certain way, and that's just what the character is. I mean, you can tell Baker clearly from Armour. You can see the characters exactly the same.
Yes.
It might be different, but the character's identical. He's got his moods. He's got everything. It's fabulous. But I think that the strongest story-led stuff is from that time, without a shadow of a doubt.
Oh yeah, agreed.
In a big screen version of the Dalek.
Well, because we've had it twice.
Yes.
With the Amicus films, so we know it worked.
No, I'll be honest with you. I never liked the Doctor Who movies, because for me they weren't like Doctor Who. I feel
they're not canon, no.
Yeah, no, when I say not canon, there's nothing to attach them to. I think the BBC did the best job with what they created, and that's pure Doctor Who with what they created.
We're not going to disagree with that.
No.
If you watch that first episode, Bill Hartnell in it, it's good television. Even now, it's drama. It's serious drama.
It's better than good. It's brilliant. I mean, I'm somebody who will speak up for the Daleks, as in the dead planet. I mean, I think it's an immensely important groundbreaking, immense piece of television. I think it's such a very, very, very important piece of television, but it's much underestimated today. I really think the Daleks is something very special. So I'm completely with you. I mean, there is no Doctor Who without that story. It's simple as that.
No, I'll be honest with you. If let's say you like Marvel comics, the original, the original Marvel comics with Spider-Man, and where people like Steve Ditko, co-creator of Spider-Man, all the rest of it. You look at what they did back then in their storytelling and how they visualized that in those
Yes.
and their stories form. If you ever look at where they made the original Spider-Man trilogy, they are true to the comics.
They are, yes.
Make Doctor Who. It's no good going all modernised and I'll do this. Make it a show.
Yeah.
The like of Robert Holmes and all these writers in the past that created this stuff, and it's good stuff. There it is. There's the keys. You don't look at it and say, let's not make it like that. You can see there's a wonderful line in classic Doctor Who that you can see. The quality of the writing.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about it because Robert Holmes is seen as one of Doctor Who's best writers, also one of the best script writers. But Robert Holmes's run with Philip Hinchcliffe series 12, 13, 14 is held up as the best of the 1970s at least.
I think if
we're talking about Doctor Who, if we're talking about how Doctor Who might work as a movie series, it's fascinating to note how influenced by the movies Robert Holmes was. Because so much of what he put into his stuff was reworking classic movie stuff. The hand of fear is the hand of Orlok and so forth and so on. He was a great recycler. So it would be interesting to think that Doctor Who could then give back and feed back in again.
John, but what isn't derivative?
Oh, of course. I mean, I'm a writer. God, blimey, there's no new stories.
The Beatles listened to Buddy Holly. They were influenced by Buddy Holly and Elvis, but they took that and then made their own stuff. It's everybody's got. You get your inspiration from a lot of places.
Well, if Doctor Who makes a story about Gallifrey, it's really just telling a story about Camelot, which is really just telling a story about Atlantis. I mean, we changed the name of the Lost City or the Lost Superior Civilization, but it's still all the same story ideas. This is the nature of how humans think and how we manifest our minds collectively in art and society. So culture, basically, isn't it? And Doctor Who has culture. I mean, I'm thinking back to sort of reflect on this interview because we're coming up to 2 hours, so sort of think about coming up to some sort of closure. Okay. Well, not like not just this moment, but just
no problem.
Steering mildly, slight tug on the steering wheel. Just reflecting on how important Doctor Who is to culture, and I'm left personally with the overriding feeling that I just wish Doctor Who was respected and appreciated more as culture by the people who've got their hands on it. And if I had one wish, it would be for the show, for people making the show to have the same respect for it that I feel, and it saddens me whenever I feel that's not the case. And your love for the show, your passion for the show to survive, because it's very, very real, your passion. And I know that from having talked to you, and how we've shared our frustrations at times about what seemed to be going on with this or that development behind the scenes or on screen, that we might have discussed, just how you never give up on their Doctor Who deserving a future. And I feel exactly the same way. And sometimes I wonder why I bother to keep slogging away. And, because some of the things that happen, that one experiences from engaging with the Doctor Who fandom are pretty damn unpleasant. I had an unpleasant incident just yesterday.
I wouldn't say that. John, I'll be honest. The majority of Doctor Who fans are intelligent, witty, great people who love a television program.
Yes, but the majority are not the noisy ones.
Well, they never are.
And they're not the ones that go around playing about with having 100 different identities either.
Indeed.
And there's also some right sickos in the Doctor Who fandom that just love to wind everybody up, and I know they do.
Yeah.
And they're on both sides of any controversy, winding both lots up because they're the kind of people that love to see the world burn. There's a few of those in fandom.
Oh, yeah, there certainly is.
But you're right. You're right. But the vast majority of Doctor Who fans are decent, good people. Most of them actually hardworking. Who just want a decent sci-fi show. Poor bastards.
I understand that.
You're absolutely right. But that's just how I feel emotionally about it. It's what keeps me connected. It's what's made me set about making this set of live streams that this interview's part of. Is because I do love Doctor Who so much, and I know that you do as well. And that's why I think it's so important, so great that we've had a chance to interview you as well as Ian, so that both of you as people that fandom should look up to and respect for what you've done and the work you've put in to make Doctor Who a better experience for all of us.
Well,
you'll always be loved for it.
My work is not finished.
Of course it isn't. And I know you won't put down tools until it's absolutely impossible for you to carry on. And that's more respect to you because, well, how can we put it? You're a really solid bloke, Philip.
Yeah.
You're a man's man in my book. Maybe you don't look at yourself that way, but
I appreciate that.
Well, certainly compared to most of the rest of what we see in Doctor Who fandom, you're very much a man's man. And all the better for it, I had to nip out a few minutes ago, and I was just about to sort of ask about the private collectors and this concern people have that stuff might disappear. I mean, what can we really do about that other than if anyone's in a position to talk to a private collector and try and see if you could persuade them to at least make arrangements for it to be in their will, so at least what happens to it be specific.
I think with the age of you've got your Facebook Marketplace and sort of your eBays and all these other selling places now. I think if an old collector dies, I think people just put the basically things will just turn up. But if anybody does see anything,
But that brings in another question that was raised by Bradley in the chat. He was asking about the Australian collector with the giant hoard of videotapes.
I did read about that. Yeah.
Do you know anything more than what's been reported in the press on that?
I don't know anything more about it, to be honest with you.
Fair enough.
I did speak to somebody that was involved. But they did say that a lot of the recordings had actually been junked, sort of around about the time period that they were looking at. But they were checking out, so you never know. There are always.
Yeah, absolutely.
This show was repeated in Australia more than it was here. So those. That exists, someone's filmed off the TV with an 8mm camera. That just shows you they came from Australia.
Yes.
Come out of Australia, and I think we had episodes back from the ABC in the early 80s. So I think probably Australia's got a bit more to give up yet.
Yeah,
fascinating,
isn't it?
No, fascinating. There you go. That is what you call a hot tip.
Yes, indeed.
Australia could be the place to be. Yeah. Well, it's a good place to be for certain. Apart from its government, but that's another question. Well, is there anything in particular that you would like to communicate to fans listening to this interview? Anything you'd particularly like to
John,
raise? And
the fans, don't give up hope. You'll read things saying this, that, and the other. I mean, it's 10 years since I returned Web and Enemy and stuff like that. And I'll be honest with you, I thought for all this the hot air I heard from a lot of people at the time that someone else was going to return something, but it's not been the case. I'm quite disappointed with that. And there was a guy I ran into a couple of weeks ago, and he said to me, Russell T Davies is back doing Doctor Who. You need to be the Russell T Davies of finding more missing Doctor Who and get some more back. And I was going to actually when he said that to me.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice.
Well,
So
they've done a lot for I mean, people appreciate you a great deal. That's just how it is.
Well, thank you. As I say, it's something for me. It's a passion. About any missing programs. As I say, we've still got a lot more to do in this. I mean, people are probably thinking, well, what have you? Well, obviously we had COVID. I was actually overseas working during COVID, and I was quite ill with COVID. I caught the Delta variant.
I remember you being ill with it. I'm very pleased that you pulled out of it.
Yes, I was. I was very ill with that. So fortunately, I managed to pull around with that, but it was touch and go for a bit of time. So, as the world's a different place now.
Yeah,
things have changed a lot. We've certainly changed a lot at TIA. We're having to adjust to how things are now rather than how they were then.
Of course.
It's interesting times. I think definitely interesting times.
Hmm.
We've got a question from TARDIS time. Philip, any chance of finding any more Sid James early stuff?
Yeah, that'd be absolutely. Yeah, we returned a missing episode of Citizen James to the BBC. I would certainly like to think so. There's more chance of more stuff coming up. Yes.
There you go. Awesome.
Fantastic. So, whether or not you're going to get to see Marco Polo, you might hear more from Sid James.
Yes.
Oh, that's a treasure all of its own. That's a sheer delight.
Yes, indeed it is.
The thing is, for me, with missing, let's say missing Doctor Who or any other program, I don't really I like surprises, and I've said this in the past, I like surprises. I don't like things to be leaked. I like just come out right of left of centre where I'm thinking, that'll never happen, and I like it to happen. That's something I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, it is nice to get the surprise out of left field, isn't it? Really is.
And I mean to prepare everything so it's going to be the last thing that's expected.
If you're not open to surprise, you're not open to joy.
Absolutely.
So you got to take a risk, haven't you? Sometimes, I mean,
I think
you've risked your time and your energy in the hope that you could achieve something from it, and what you found was that overwhelmingly you did. Because that's what happens when you dedicate yourself to something in life. You actually get somewhere, and that's a great lesson.
That's absolutely true. That is exactly right. It's that's the if you do dedicate yourself to something, and I mean also being open-minded with it, and also relationships with other people. You do need other people to help you along the way. I think anything's possible.
Yeah.
Matt Pounder is hanging out with some hope for some more Likely Lads. He says the Likely Lads would be great.
There was, I think, Network just put out 2 missing episodes of the Likely Lads on their DVD with the movie of the Likely Lads that they would recently put out. But that's something I've never come across. The Likely Lads. I'd certainly like to see more of that.
Absolutely. So that's an interesting question, Philip. Aside from Doctor Who, what are you most hoping to find?
Oh, what am I most hoping to find aside from Doctor Who? Wow. Oh, I tell you, for purely historical reasons, I'd love to find the show that Buddy Holly did for the BBC in the 50s. I'd love to have a copy of that.
Interesting. So what kind of show was that? Was that like a?
It was a music show that he did,
right.
and it was. I think an audio recording exists of it.
Aha. So it was a live set.
Yeah, it was a live show he did at the Shepherd's Bush Empire.
Fantastic.
It's the BBC recorded, yeah.
Well, let's all put our hopes behind you finding that, because if that's what you want to find the most, then that's what I want you to find the most, because you deserve the success.
John, there are many, many, many things I'd like to find, but
of course there are. Of course there are.
It could be a historical importance. I mean, one of my favourite things that I found was an episode, but because it had the Sonic singing Days live in the studio. That was really, that was a wonderful thing to find, because I think that's the earliest surviving Basil Brush now.
Wow.
Wow.
And what date is that from?
I think that's 60. I think it's from it's definitely from the first Basil Brush series.
Wow.
It's Rodney Bewes, and it's the first from that first series that he did at the BBC.
Wow.
I mean, I never really rated Basil Brush much, you see. It was just the annoying thing I wanted to get out of the way so he could put Doctor Who on. But I was that kind of kid, I wasn't very tolerant of the football pools either.
No problem.
So I never came to love Basil Brush. He was just annoy the hell out of me.
Yeah.
But I know it's ridiculous, absurd stuff.
Yeah, John. Strangely enough, the Basil Brush show that I recovered back then, that was an audition print again.
Look at that.
That was an audition. So it was. I think the themselves were delighted that performance had survived.
Oh yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Live set.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So things like that, that's pretty good. Morecambe and Wise, that was another one that I got back. I did a show on BBC Two for them for the Lost Morecambe and Wise tapes. That was a good one.
I also want to thank Goldenagedgeek, because he's been very good and very patient.
I managed to sneak him in when you were busy talking.
I know. I booked it off for 2 minutes. You managed to get him.
I got him in there.
Give
him a shot. Yeah.
Well done. But I want to hand this over to you for a minute, Goldenagedgeek. Here you are. Here's Phillip Morris. What would you like to ask him? Have you got anything that hasn't been covered that you want to raise? No ambushing.
I have one particular question. So of course, some of the missing stories, we've had like animated reconstructions of them, and of course people have their opinions over them. But what I would like to ask is, say there are certain stories that are unable to, be found or put back together. Do you think that they should continue to like reanimate them, or like reconstruct them with live action people? Of course they'll have to recast that sort of thing, or do you think we should just leave them be?
The question of AI is getting raised more and more, because on voices and faces it's now getting extremely good as to what you can get on a home computer.
An honest answer to that question is the first thing, and have commercial viability within fandom. If it does, then there's a commercial answer to that question. I think for the moment they have, filled the void. They've kept some people happy. I know the people that work on the animations work extremely hard. They have a limited budget to work on, and obviously time constraints. And I think that for being made, that they're kind of okay. They're not something I would be enamored with, but there again, they're not being made for a huge budget, so
Yeah.
Well, the Fury of the Deep animation comes under the most criticism.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was the first one where Gary Russell took over, and it is notable that the Evil of the Daleks was far better received because it was far more faithful to what had originally been on the screen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that recent criticisms again regarding Abominable Snowmen involve again changing away from what was on the screen.
I think creatively you've got a problem there.
Yes.
You must be true to what was originally created. You're not making a new production. It isn't a new production. It's a recreation of a past production. And I think if you're a true fan of something, this is only my opinion, then you've got to stay true to that creative vision.
Yeah.
Well, they changed actors' appearances to look more quote unquote Tibetan.
Yeah.
And they changed you know, I can't get the name of the character right in this moment. No, it doesn't matter. The bishop, the archbishop. They changed him into sort of an AD&D sort of lich, you know, like an undead thing, which wasn't what he was at first. I mean, it looked quite dramatic, you know, but it wasn't what was there originally. And with Fury of the Deep, it was putting in giant tentacles, but would never have been remotely possible. You know, never even considered that.
Yeah, I think you can interject, John. I think there's and that's. I think once you go trying to recreate or put your own vision into something that is an original production, I think you're on sticky ground, really.
I think also the animations have fallen into trouble sometimes by putting in their own little Easter eggs and in jokes, which then become a bit too obvious and take you out of it a bit. Like when you spot the mugshot for the Master in multiple shots, multiple times, it's too much, you know.
I think a problem is I think modern people don't understand something here, and that's when these programs were made in the 60s. Doctor Who TV, 48 weeks of the year. It was made on a shoestring. How they kept it, I will never know. And I mean, you've got to look at things through how they were made and through that lens.
Yeah.
And
there's a reason that foam was the monster.
Yes.
But as I say, back in the day, these programs were very popular and very effective.
Well, this is part of the heart of why I love it as a 50-year-old man. Is because of what it meant to me as a child. Of course it is. And, I'm just one example of the thousands of people who say the same. But it because it was made on tuppence halfpenny, absolutely. But it was the love of ideas. That's what Doctor Who was always about. Above everything else for me was the love of ideas. And especially as a child, I was in need of ideas.
I think, John, when I look back at it, I'll think of certain things like, if you remember the John Pertwee story, The Time Warrior, I always remember where Lynx took his helmet off.
So do I.
The best makeup I had ever seen. I thought that was totally convincing. I thought that was absolutely mind-blowing when I first saw that.
Gobsmacking. The quality of the show it managed to achieve at times.
It was absolutely fabulous.
Absolutely stunning. Yeah.
And that
we've got another question for you here. Disaster Area would like to know, Philip, what is your opinion on colorizing black and white episodes? Now, is this heresy or is this the shape of things to come? What do you reckon?
Okay, I think the programs originally were made in black and white, so you can watch them in black and white. That's not a problem. I think if you can bring the picture quality from the black and white recordings up to a modern standard, so they can be watched on a modern HD TV, and if then you can colorize them correctly using possibly photographs that were taken on the sets at the time, and they're stunning, as an alternate version, then yes. but not a cheap colorization or anything like that. With a poor remastered film print, then the answer would be no. It would have to be a top end restoration, I'm afraid, if it was to be done at all.
Yes. Oh gosh, it's got to be top end. Yes.
I mean,
I struggle with these
some of the
Blu-ray
Handbox
sets.
that colorized, and to be honest with you, I didn't think they were very good.
I struggle with these Blu-ray sets, Philip. I mean, Ian's very keen on promoting them. I struggle with them because I've already got the whole show on DVD.
Yeah.
Well, classic, obviously, right? So I sort of look at that Blu-ray set and I look at it's advertised as a series of Blu-ray, but actually only one or two of the stories of Blu-ray quality, and the rest of the set is the same as the DVD quality I've already got. So apart from perhaps a bit of new commentary or some new feature or two, do I really need it? I mean, I'd be happier if I could get the one or two episodes that are modern quality. If I could get those separately, I would pay 20 quid each for them rather than pay 70 quid for a box of what 80% I already have.
Well,
but if
John,
I didn't have the DVDs, the Blu-rays would be fantastic, wouldn't they?
John, down the line, you may find that happening. They may come as individual releases. I mean, I don't know. The person that's in charge of this is a guy called Russell Minton at BBC Studios, and he's a fabulous guy. Really is. He absolutely cares for the content that he puts out. Considering the budgets they work under on these Blu-ray sets, which are immense, they do a remarkable job. You'll also find that technology is improving all the time now. So
it's leaping ahead right now.
Yeah, what's going to happen ahead? I'm not too sure, but the people who make the Blu-ray sets, I have to say, there's a lot of work goes into them. They're very dedicated people, and
there's a guy. I think his name is Charlie Hopkins. He's got a YouTube channel, and he's doing these commentaries where he's having Gandalf and Elrond and Boromir react to the Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, they are brilliant. They are brilliant.
Or he's got Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn and Anakin Skywalker reacting to Star Wars. So he's able to take his own body and credibly deep fake their face and their speech and their mannerisms, their facial speech and facial mannerisms and their voices, and it's very good. So we're clearly not far away from the potential of recreating a story from scratch.
If you think about it, with, let's say, Doctor Who missing episodes, if you think about it, we do have the camera scripts, so we know what marks are, where people stood, everything else. It's possible there are certain things you could deep fake, certain things you could remake. So it just depends. I think every avenue is being looked at, really. So
of course it is. Of course it is. And there are going to be exciting surprises ahead, because I do believe there's more to be found. But whether it's going to come from some obscure film stock library that just needs to be looked into, or from a private collector, wherever these episodes might come back from, I personally feel there's at least a good 20% of Doctor Who maybe still out there of the missing stuff. That's my feeling. I don't have any anything. That is just my feeling. But when I take into account all the bits of information I've heard from all over the place over the years, it seems to indicate that we haven't finished yet. And that's a great message. Ian wasn't sure how much was out there to find him in the TV stations, but you're saying the search continues, and I'm very glad to hear it. Philip, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you tonight. We're so grateful to you for coming and spending your time with us.
It's been absolutely fabulous to spend some time and talk with you guys, and I've really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone else listening has too.
We've had some very good feedback in the chat, and we've had a fair few people watching. everybody seems to have enjoyed it, and it's been fun, and learned some very interesting things.
We've informed people, and as
We
always,
have.
we're also raising awareness for my chosen charity, pancreascancer.co.uk.
Indeed.
And as I continue my my fight to survive, I'm doing quite well.
You are indeed. You are indeed.
At the moment, Philip, you may not know this actually. I don't know if I've specifically told you, but I've gone from giving me 3 to 6 months back in December. So they're now pretty confident I'm going to be here next year because I'm responding strongly to this hormone treatment. It's funny. I could have got into a depression or a gloom about it all, and I could easily have done something over Christmas and said, "That's it. I'm out of here. I'm not hanging around for this." But don't give up on life.
No, John.
Don't ever give up on life, because at the end of the day, unless circumstances become truly dire, life is always worth living.
Yes,
it is 100%.
absolutely.
And every day that I get to feel the sun on my face and enjoy a morning, every day I get to see my family, every day I get to watch Doctor Who again, it's all rich, good stuff, and to be appreciated, and not to be rushed. And even when we have these most terrible bits of news, and I know I'm not the only person, even in the chat, who's struggling with diagnoses at the moment, we're all supporting each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And uniting around what we love is a great thing to do. And you've come and you've shared your love for Doctor Who with us tonight, and you've informed us of so much, cleared up some important questions, and it's just been fantastic. So again, thank you so much.
Yeah,
it's my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. Can I just clear one other thing up? I mean, I read
this
online.
Of course you can.
Somebody said that everything I've done, I've always been sponsored by the BFI. And I just make it clear, I've never been sponsored by the BFI or anyone, or the BBC or anyone else. I've always done this on my own. I'm not, never been, sort of financed by anyone. It's always been financed by myself.
Rumors are the worst things to ever try and quash, aren't they? Because even if you deny it, there's always somebody who's going to refuse to believe the denial. And of course, another area that me and Gobby have been producing content for is supporting Noel Clarke.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm not sure what your feelings are about Noel Clarke. I've not really asked you about it, Philip. But I mean, I did the big investigation last year.
John, I think with Noel Clarke, accusations were made against him. That's one thing. But he's not been, there's no prosecution, so there's no evidence against him. So for me, he's an innocent man. Something to say, then say it to him in court and bring that. There's nothing to be said. So,
that is perfect, Philip. They go straightforward, direct, common sense. How simple this really is. So
it is that simple.
What Matt Pound has just said, we appreciate your hard work, Philip Morris. Hats off to you, sir. And hats off to you for what you've just said with regard to what happened with Noel too. And the good news is that he's recently come out swinging, and he's had big numbers on podcasts, and he is being heard, especially by the inner London black community, which is very important to turning around people's perception of him. So continue to wish the best for him. I hope
Noel takes the whole experience that he's been through and he uses it for a positive thing, because
I can assure you he has that character. He is that kind of man. I can assure you of that. He will put this to some good somewhere down the line.
Don't get me wrong, if someone's done something and the things I saw he was accused of, if he was guilty of them, it'd be in a court of law. There's no case to answer, so the man can get on with his life.
Damn straight. Well, all these people were giving all the time I needed, but it seems that none of them want to actually take the jeopardy of making these claims in a court of law.
Absolutely.
And that in itself speaks volumes.
Well, Ben, you're destroying someone's reputation by word of mouth, and that's not how the rule of law.
Exactly. 100%.
That's all I've got. That's all I've got to say on that subject. Anyway.
Thank you for the insight. It was a very great comment indeed, Philip. Thank you so much. We're going to say good night and
good night, gentlemen.
Of course,
as Dave Allen would say.
If people wish to follow you on Twitter, they should do so. And of course, Archives 1968.
Indeed.
So we shall. I shall see you on there, no doubt. So,
absolutely, gentlemen.
So thank you very much. Good night, Philip. Good night, chat. Thank you again, Gobby, for hosting.
No
Thank
worries.
you, Goldenagedgeek.
Yes, thanks for popping on. And
next week we're back up with Series 5, everybody.
Yes. It's
Why
time
We
to
Love
go.
Doctor Who. We dive into the Moffat era.
Oh, this will be fun.
The 11th hour.
It is indeed. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.